Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Matt Jarbo. Welcome back to Three Buck Theater. And today I'm going to do something that I've never really done before, but it gets asked of me all the time. And that is, what are my top ranking movies? Like, what's my list of favorite films from multitude of different years, right? Like a multitude of different genres. I mean, there's always going to be movies to pull from for lists. I'm not the biggest list fan, but one of the things that kind of drew my attention is the year by year aspect of it. I started going back and looking through from 1990 to 1999, pulling out the films that I had seen that year. And then, of course, at this point, painstakingly trying to compile them into a list of the top 25. What you're going to have to understand is that there are numbers on this list that are going to probably make you want to pull your damn hair out. And there might be a few others that you absolutely agree with. There are movies that I didn't get to in the year 1990 for this list because they don't speak to me on the level that the rest of the movies on this list do. And that's how I'm going to rank them. This isn't like an overall quality. This isn't like a box office spectacular type situation. This is literally just what I feel about a movie and how it impacted me way back when I was a kid, when I saw this. Because for 1990, that was a big year. I was 8 years old. I was starting to go see movies on my own. I was starting to rent movies from the library, rent them from the video store, movies I wanted to see, movies that I was picking out. New movies were getting my attention, especially the adverts and everything else. And for me, it was just this kind of going down this rabbit hole that over the course of 1990 to 1999, I've seen most likely over 800 films that came out during that decade. And I want to talk about a lot of them because a lot of them are really good and really worth discussing. But for this one, we're just going to do a list. So here's a couple movies that just didn't make their way into it, just so you guys understand this here. A couple of the ones that didn't make their way in was Pretty Woman. I've seen it. I love it. But, not, Edward Scissorhands didn't really do it for me. Dances with Wolves, Ghost, Men at Work, the Emilio Estevez, Charlie Sheen movie that's really funny, but it just didn't really seem to kind of like grip me. Slacker, Miller's Crossing. I mean, I've seen all these movies, but it's just like things along those lines that you might really love. But for me, it's a little bit different, like Pump Up the Volume, Bonfire of the Vanities. These are movies that an 8-year-old kid wouldn't have necessarily watched back in 1990 or even throughout the course of the 90s. Even though I have seen these movies, it's just a little bit different of a scenario. So without further ado, let's just jump into it because, again, number 25 here is going to be one that I think a lot of people are going to look at me, scratch their heads and go, what? Because for me, number 25 is American Ninja 4, The Annihilation. Yeah. If you've ever seen any of the American Ninja movies, and a lot of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s, we've seen the American Ninja films. We know Michael Dudikoff. This is the first one that I saw. I ended up seeing them in reverse order as time went on, but this was the first one that I saw because it was playing one night on cable TV, and I just happened to give it a watch. And I was like, wow, holy crap. Like, I love Ninja Turtles, i.e. ninjas. This movie is about an American ninja. I'm American. I want to be a ninja. I'm a kid, and he's fighting a bunch of different color-coded bad guys. It's a real simple movie with a real simple plot. Total early 90s cheese that's doing its best to kind of still replicate the 80s and everything else. It's such a fine little fun movie. It's very dumb, but it's Michael Dudikoff, and back then he was kind of like a poor man Steven Seagal to an extent, because Seagal himself, and we'll be talking about Seagal a couple times in this list. Seagal back in the day, in my mind, was untouchable, but it's just one of those things where American Ninja 4, The Annihilation, is one that I always just watched. I watched it a number of times on cable. I think I rented it a couple of times before getting the ability to go and actually watch the other 3 films and everything. Number 3 is not as good, by the way. Number 4 is way better than number 3. But anyway, number 24 is Joe Versus the Volcano. This is just a fun movie. This was the first time Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan teamed up together. This was before Sleepless in Seattle. And that movie is kind of like the quintessential rom-com, everything else. That movie defined the early 90s in regards to that kind of movie. But Joe Versus the Volcano is just an odd duck of a film. It's just an odd duck of a movie. It's just Joe, Tom Hanks thinks he's dying, and is going to go throw himself into a volcano, I think in order to like appease an old ritual for Hawaii. It's very dated in regards to like how it's portrayal of indigenous people, especially when you get to the whole like orange soda scene. But then Meg Ryan plays like 4 different characters in the movie, and it's very much a romantic film, and it's a fantasy to an extent. It's a lot of fun. I've always enjoyed it, and it's one that I would go back to probably more than, let's say, Sleepless in Seattle, but not as much as You've Got Mail, because who doesn't love You've Got Mail? Now, getting in at number 23, we're going to be talking about Stephen King and his very, very, very creepy story, Misery. Kathy Bates, James Caan. This movie to me as an adult absolutely means a lot more than when I saw it as a kid, because when you see it as a kid, it's like you look at it through the lens of it being like a mom who is like, you know, just beating the crap out of the guy that she likes. Because Kathy Bates has that mom energy, and I was a child. I was a wee child, a little child. But when you get to the end of that movie and she like shotgun blasts the sheriff, and it just like I still vividly remember like his chest exploding from the shotgun blast and everything. It just like, it's those are the moments, the ankle scene, the sledgehammer scene, that will stay with you forever, right? If we're going to quote Sandlot, forever, that's going to be in another video. But the thing with this movie now that I'm 42, is I've been doing YouTube long enough. I've been swatted. I've had handwritten death threats mailed to my house. I've had people attempt to blackmail me over the years. Like, I know what it's like to be a content creator. And in the case of James Caan's character, an author is a content creator. And having stan culture. This is stan culture before stan culture became stan culture. And it's still just such an excellent, excellent movie. Jumping into number 22 is Marked for Death. This is Steven Seagal versus Jamaicans. That's basically the premise of the movie. Jamaicans target his family, these gangs. He decides to go and work with Keith David to track them down to Jamaica and take them out. It's Seagal. It's a Seagal movie back at the time when a Seagal movie was appointment viewing. Like, you would make time to go see a Steven Seagal movie. We're not even at Under Siege 2, On Deadly Ground. We're nowhere, Fire Down Below. We are nowhere near any of those levels of Seagal. Executive Decision, which is a whole other film. But Seagal had a good year, especially in 1990. And I love Marked for Death. It's just one of those ones where it's so late 80s. You just know what you're going to get, and you can turn off your brain and just watch Seagal kick the crap out of so many people. Does it hold up as well now? No, because you can see a lot of how they shot the movie and whatever, but still, the man with the ponytail, you know what I mean? The man with the ponytail. Now, going on from there, we get into one of my favorite comedies from the 90s, and this, of course, is My Blue Heaven. This is one I feel is wildly underrated, and I'm definitely going to have to talk about that for The Overlooked Hotel. But My Blue Heaven is Steve Martin as an informant against the mob, or he's a mobster. Yeah, no, sorry. He's a mobster who ends up going into witness protection, and he ends up going to a small little Californian town, and Rick Moranis is his agent, and he has to, his protector, because he's there in witness protection in order to then testify against his boss. And, you know, he's like, yeah, standing, hey, I'm the guy, gabagoo. You know, he's like the New Yorker, man. Comes into this small little town and just kind of upsets everything. And it's a really, really good, really funny, really wholesome movie. I mean, the whole thing when he's like working on, you know, building the baseball field, and he's collecting all that money, and then everyone thinks he's stealing the money because that's kind of what he did before, but he's actually really trying to turn over a new leaf and everything else. It's such a good movie. If you've never seen My Blue Heaven, it's up there. You gotta love it. Number 20 is one that I probably should have put higher on the list because I love it so damn much, but I will probably admit that I like the sequel a little bit better. And that, of course, is Problem Child. If you've never seen Problem Child, this was the kind of movie I was banned from watching as a kid because my mom legitimately felt that something like this would give me the wrong idea. It's the same reason I was banned from watching Ferris Bueller's Day Off. The thing is, though, Michael Oliver's Junior Healy is such a little bastard in this movie. And most of it just has to do with him acting out because he doesn't want to be disrespected and he just wants like a father figure. In this case, it's John Ritter, who's married to Amy Aspect. They were married in real life. I don't know if they met while they were making this movie or whatever. And then, of course, you've got Michael Richards as a serial killer, I believe, or just like criminal killer, whatever, who breaks out of jail and happens to be the biggest fan of Junior Healy. So he comes out there so they can go out and get like smile cakes or something, or go on a crime spree together. It's a weird, darker movie, especially the ending of it. But number two, it definitely like lightened up the vibes a bit. But I mean, number one is still just like, it's a good movie. It's a good, solid, what is this film? And they even did a third movie, which I'll talk about at some point, that was for NBC only. It was made for TV. It's not terrible, but it's not this. But number 19, this is one that I got to admit, I was dying to see as a kid. And that was Dick Tracy. The iconography of Warren Beatty in like the yellow, fedora, the yellow jacket, right? The brick top. Or, what is it? Flat top or like brick face, whatever, all the different characters in the movie. And you got Al Pacino and Robert De Niro and William Forsythe and Madonna, and it's such a weird movie that Warren Beatty still apparently owns the rights to the Dick Tracy movie franchise. And so like, he still portrays Dick Tracy, I think once every year for like a few minutes in some program in order to then uphold the right so he can still hold on to those things. I mean, I read that somewhere. I got to go back and double check. But like Dick Tracy is just a wild movie for the 1990s. And I remember like I think it was, I think I had the trading cards for it. I remember McDonald's, I think, had a Happy Meal for it. This was a movie that was so weird. It's just so iconic in that particular way. It's not the best movie in the world, but it was definitely one that belongs on the list in my particular opinion. Coming in at number 18 is a bit of an oddball comedy. In fact, it's called Loose Cannons, if you ever saw that one. Gene Hackman, Dan Aykroyd, Dom DeLuise. And it's a weird movie about like Dan Aykroyd he's got some kind of mental disorder. He's, I think, like schizophrenic or bipolar or dual personality or whatever it is. I forget exactly what it is. But Gene Hackman plays the straight man, and they're trying to like uncover, or they're trying to get back this video reel, right? This film reel of a guy, Nazi stuff, right? Killing Hitler, essentially. Hitler didn't kill himself. In this movie, he was murdered by somebody else. It's a whole thing. It's a weirder movie. It's a funny movie. It's definitely like Dan Aykroyd post, Ghostbusters, and Gene Hackman kind of in like what feels like a Midnight Run sort of role. And then of course, Dom DeLuise is Dom DeLuise. I mean, it's not, it almost feels like he's the same character from Cannonball Run, but that of course is just Dom DeLuise. I really like Nancy Travis is in it. I need to watch it again. I remember really, really, really liking it as a kid. I need to watch it again as an adult because the premise is so weird, but that's part of what makes it so much fun. But then we get into number 17, and this is the other Seagal film that came out in 1990, and that's Hard to Kill. This is the one I think that was like, that really kind of because this one came out before Marked for Death, right? So, because there was Above the Law, Hard to Kill, Marked for Death, right? That was kind of like the quintessential Seagal trilogy back in the day. And this is the one where, he's a DEA agent. He ends up getting killed after he uncovers that there's like political, crime happening, and then he wakes up, I think like 7 years later out of a coma, and then trains himself to fight back and goes and fights back. Like Kelly LeBrock's in it and everything else. Freaking smoking hot Kelly LeBrock. It's like such a great violent movie that you just have to love. It's Seagal. Like I said, Seagal in the 90s was kind of like unparalleled. He was absolutely unmatched in so many ways. And that's one of the reasons why you have to love his movies. Number 16 is a remake of a quintessential classic of what kicked off a whole genre of films. And this is the Night of the Living Dead remake, directed by Tom Savini and starring Tony Todd. As much as I love the original 68 Romero movie, I would go on a limb and say that I think Night of the Living Dead, the remake, coming off of Return of the Living Dead movies from the 80s, as well as, you know, the late 70s with Dawn of the Dead, and then early 80s with Day of the Dead. I think this one was like a really good modern remake of it, right? I didn't see it until I was older. I didn't see it until I bought the DVD of it many years ago. But I remember watching it and going like, oh, wow, this is really well done. Like, this is really good. Like, Savini was able to bring the gore that he knew how to do as being like the master, you know, special effects guy that he is. And he actually made a really solid remake of the film. And Tony Todd, as always, is excellent. So it's a solid remake. It's a solidly good movie. I could see, you know, people out there saying, well, this is one that is maybe better than the original. I don't know, like, I like it better than the original, but the original is so iconic in so many ways. I actually just recently bought the Criterion 4K of Night of the Living Dead, and it looks amazing. Absolutely looks amazing. So moving on into number 15. This one is this one's going to be kind of crazy. This was Captain America. Captain America. This is a Canon film. Okay, we all know how Canon was back in the day. This is one I saw on TV. I don't know if it ever went to theaters. I don't think it did. I think it went to TV or maybe just home video. But I saw it when they specially premiered it in the 90s on television. And I recorded it and I watched it so many freaking times. Is it a good movie? Not at all. Right? Are there dated effects? Yes. Does it kind of feel a little bit like Forever Young? A little bit, right? This came out even before Forever Young. But it kind of felt like a little bit like Forever Young. And it's just like, but it was the first time we got to see Captain America. And this was also like around the same time, Canon was even promoting them doing a Spider-Man movie. I think the year before this one came out, there's actually a demo reel that they put together, or a sizzle reel of upcoming projects. And one of them was Spider-Man. And then they also had mentioned Captain America. And I just remember loving this movie. I know it's on Blu-ray now. I need to go find a copy of it. If I ever find one in the wild, I'll definitely buy it. But come on. It's bad, but it's Captain freaking America. Number 14 is a movie that does have a very special place in my heart for a couple of different reasons. Spaced Invaders. This is a wacky comedy. It is a comedy. It's got Ariana Richards in it. That's about who I remember being in the movie. She was Lex in Jurassic Park. It's directed by Patrick Reed Johnson, who did Baby's Day Out, which just turned 30. He did Angus, which is one of my all-time favorite comedies. And, he also wrote the Dragonheart movie. And I think also wrote like the franchise, whatever. But this is one where it's just on Halloween night, these crazy ass aliens, these little Martians crash land in like a small Iowa town, and everyone thinks that they're kids in costumes, and they have to kind of get out of there before a robot comes to just kill everyone, and it's a whole little wacky thing. And it's all like, there's a whole line in the trailer where one of the Martians is like, prepare to die, Earth scum, and then the other guy's like, I'm going to have that printed on your tombstone. It was in the trailer. It's a funny line in the movie. It doesn't really make a lot of sense like all these years later, because why would Martians have tombstones? Why would they know what a tombstone is? It is what it is, but at the same time, it's a classic movie in my opinion. You gotta love it. Number 13, Child's Play 2. This is a movie that I saw many years later, but the first interaction I had with it was, I think it was in the summer of 1991. And I was visiting my dad in a small town east of Seattle, and there was nothing in the city, right? It was just like a dirt lot, but they had a video store. And I would go down there all the time when I went to visit to go rent movies. And I went down there one day and I went to go rent something. I think I was looking to pick up Cool as Ice. I liked Vanilla Ice back in the, don't judge me. Don't you judge me. I know you're judging me, okay? If you don't judge me, hit the like button. That's all I can really do in this one. But I remember the guy who was at the video store was watching Child's Play 2, and I watched the scene where Chucky killed the teacher in the closet, and that messed with my head so much. I had nightmares like the next 2 days, and I didn't watch the movie in its entirety for a few more years. I watched 1, 2, and 3 back before Bride of Chucky came out. My friend and I, one Halloween, we watched all of them. Man, Child's Play 2 is really, really, really good. It's not as good as the first one, because the first one's an iconic classic movie. But as far as sequels go, it's really good. It is better than number 3, although number 3 is fine. It's fun. But number 2 is just like, especially the ending of it when they go to the good guys plant was just so like, just all that melted plastic. That messed with me when I was a kid. That's one of the reasons why you gotta love it, right? So then coming in at number 12, this one would probably be higher on the list for a lot of other people, but it's just kind of there for me. And that's Goodfellas. It's a good movie. It's a great film. It's so well made. It's so well done. But it's never been one that's kind of like been high on a list for me. It's just like, it's mob movies have always kind of felt the same. And I know it's Scorsese, but Scorsese to me has always kind of just done similar stuff. You know, like it wasn't until The Departed, I feel he kind of just like made something that was, I don't know, maybe more commercial. I don't know, maybe that was just the age of which I saw Goodfellas. But it was one that like I know a lot of people, I think I saw it when I was in film school. So I was way overly critical of it. And that might be why it's so far down on the list. But it's one that I do need to watch again now that I'm an adult and I have kids and I understand a lot more about the world and I've experienced a lot more. But look, the performances were fantastic. I mean, Ray Liotta was amazing. What was it? Lorraine Bracco was in it, right? That was the woman in that one. Joe Pesci, De Niro, Sam Jackson. I mean, it is such an iconic movie in and of itself. It's just not one that always kind of resonated with me, but it's still a good film nonetheless. Now we get into number 11, Darkman. Sam Raimi is a twisted son of a bitch. Okay, like in a good way, in a really good way. When I was watching Darkman when I was a kid, it was such a weird take because it felt like it was Batman, but a way darker, more twisted version of Batman. Durant, I forget the name of the actor who played him right now. He was in Dr. Giggles. It was Larry Drake, I think was his name. He was great in the movie as Durant, right? Like he was great as the villain. Liam Neeson was awesome as Darkman. Like the way that they did the special effects for the 90s, you know, and how Raimi was able to kind of pioneer what feels like stop motion in regards to some of the claymation work on the face, right? When they were doing the transformation stuff. And it was just like a really, really, really good movie. And it spawned sequels. They're not as good. They should, I don't know if they should ever remake it. I don't think they should. I think if they were going to remake it, the only person who people would want to see in the role would be like Bruce Campbell, you know, because that's just kind of how it is. But I also don't feel like it needs a remake, but it does need a revisiting because it's Darkman. You know, Darkman is a movie that a lot of us horror fans are going to be big on, but I think a lot of normies don't really know what it is because it's just kind of so like niche and cult at this particular point in time, which is kind of sad. It's kind of sad, to be fair. But getting into number 9. Number 9 is another movie that I feel like was big at the time, but it's been largely overlooked ever since then. And it definitely influenced the way that I viewed creepy crawly insects. And I'm talking about Arachnophobia. This is a movie that when it came out, it was playing at a single screen theater in the town I lived in. One of my best friends and his family were going to go see it. They invited me to go with. And I was like, cool. And I went to my mom and I said, hey, Mom, I'm going to go see Arachnophobia with my friends and their parents. And she's like, isn't that the spider movie? And I said, yeah, it's a spider movie. She's like, are you going to be okay to watch it? I'm like, I'm fine. I'm only 8. I'm good. It's not a problem. The movie scared the crap out of me, man. I was rewatching it again recently because I want to go through it again. Like my daughter is 6 and I'm kind of thinking of films that kind of like not showing her arachnophobia, not till she's way older. But it definitely got me thinking in regards to like a fair amount of stuff with spiders and like how I viewed spiders and how freaky they are. And that stayed with me over the years. I have a feeling arachnophobia has led to the genocide of a lot of spiders, but they keep multiplying and they're still here. And never mind those. The thing about arachnophobia was the little spider babies were all Australian huntsman spiders. So they're not native to America. Since that's the primary like movie going audience, those spiders looked exotic and they looked creepy. And that's one of the things that sold them on it immensely. You know what I mean? Like I could imagine them doing another one and using a camel spider from Iraq because those things look out of this world and they're not poisonous to humans, but it doesn't matter. You see something like that coming at you, you gonna run. You know what I mean? And then some of the shots in that movie, Frank Marshall did a great job directing that film. John Goodman, Jeff Daniels, Arachnophobia, dude, you gotta love it, right? You do have to love it. But then when we get into number 8, because now we're up on number 8, Die Hard 2. Die Hard 2, Die Harder is a movie that largely gets panned by a lot of people. It's not as good as the original. Nothing is as good as the original. But Die Hard is the greatest action movie ever made. Not the greatest adventure movie, because that's Raiders of the Lost Ark, but the greatest action movie ever made. So if you're going to do a sequel to that, that's going to try to expand upon the original, as well as honor the original and then also be something that John McClane can get into but still get out of. I think they did a really good job. Rennie Harlan did a really, really, really good job on that movie because that came out the same year as The Adventures of Ford Fairlane, which also came out in 1990. And that was also Rennie Harlan. So he was kind of doing double duty that year. And I think, look, Willis did a great job. William Sadler did a great job. Dennis Franz did a great job. Bonnie Bedelia did a great job. I mean, Reginald L. Johnson, one scene. Al was in one scene. Like, what the heck, man? It's like Paul Reiser in Beverly Hills Cop 2, you know? What the hell? Anyway. No, Die Hard 2, good story, great action. I love the twist. I love the ending. I love the yippee-ki-yay motherfucker. Like the way it was good. It's a solid action movie that is not as good. It's like out of the original trilogy, it's the weakest, but out of the 5 of them, right? Out of the pentrilogy, whatever you want to call it, pentology, it's definitely like number 3, right? It is number 3. Although I do like Live Free or Die Hard, but we'll talk more about that at another day. Moving on from there, we get Predator 2. Now, Predator 2 will never top John McTiernan's Predator. But Danny Glover did such a good damn job in this movie. Gary Busey did such a great freaking job in this movie. And also, like I was mentioned before with the Marked for Death, man, like the Jamaicans just did not have a good year in movies. I think it was 93 when Cool Runnings came out. They got some positive representation, but here they were very much stereotypical, especially with the Predator fighting the Jamaican lord, crime lord, whatever in the city, the urban jungle, if you will. I love Predator 2. I love the ending of Predator 2. I love how that ties into Alien versus Predator and how that's tied into, like, I think Predators and, you know, Prey also touched upon it, keeping it within the canon. And it's just such a fun, violent movie. That's just, it's so cool. It's so cool. It's not as good as the original, but man, who wouldn't love to see a movie from like 1994, 95 that had Danny Glover and Arnold Schwarzenegger fighting predators? That just would have been epic beyond belief. But we got some really good Predator content. And even number 6 here is actually an Arnold movie that came out in 1990, Kindergarten Cop. Mr. Kimball, right? I'm from Oregon, born and raised. So when Goonies came out, having been shot in Astoria, that is like awesome to us. Kindergarten Cop also being filmed in Astoria is another big thing for those of us who grew up in that area during that time. And not only that, it's a great movie, right? This was really like Arnold's first time kind of doing something wholesome, and it just worked really well. Penelope Ann Miller was great in the movie. I forget the name of his partner. It's Patty Reed. Is it Patty Reed was his partner in that one? Or Helen Reed? Was it Helen? I forget. It's Reed something. Pamela Reed? I think it's Pamela Reed is what it is. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it's such a good movie. It's just such a, the bad guy was just so like, the bad guy and his mom were just so like slickly, slimily evil. You know what I mean? Like they just wanted the kid. I get all that, but it was just like, they just had this real bad vibe about them every time they're in a scene. Like they ooze like just grody, icky, ooey stuff, and then you just got like the class full of kids, it's not the tumor, like I have a penis. It's such a good movie. Great film. It's infinitely rewatchable. Absolutely. And that even goes as far as number 5. With number 5, this one's going to be a little lower on the list for me, but it may be even you, or it should maybe be higher for you guys. I'm talking about Back to the Future 3. I adored this film. This movie is flawless in my opinion. In fact, if you get the DVD of it, I think even the 4K or Blu-ray, if you look on Back to the Future 3 deleted scenes on the DVD, there was only one. There was only one deleted scene that made it onto the DVD from what I remember. I need to go. Today's Prime Day. I could buy it for $25. I probably will after this. Back to the Future is arguably the best, like probably the greatest sci-fi trilogy of all time. It's perfect. There's nothing about it that's wrong or bad. Number 3 is fantastic. Like number 2, To the Future. Number 3, To the Past. It just, the juxtaposition, how they shot it back to back, how they released it 1 year apart. I remember going and seeing this movie when it came out and the theater being so full that my cousin and I had to sit on the floor of the walkway and watch the movie. That is how full it was. But we were not like, my aunt was like, no, we're not going to go and wait for another screening. Sit down on the floor and watch the damn movie. And we did, and we loved it. And it's been such a classic. But there's other movies in the year that I think are better and overall in some ways, at least a higher up for me. Because number 4, Tremors. Kevin Bacon, Fred Ward, like Ariana Richardson, even Space Invader. She was in that movie. She's also in number 3 of Tremors. The Tremors franchise is like it's amazing. All of them are great. Tremors 1 is the best. Reba McEntire. How can I forget Reba? You know, I forget the name of is it Bert, right? Of the gun guy who's in all the movies and everything else. I think Michael something or another. It's such a great movie. And it's one I watched so many times as a kid. And then Tremors 2 came out, and I watched, my buddies and I, we rented that movie all the time. We love Tremors 2. Tremors 3 with the ass blaster, it's a little bit weird, but the graboids were great. And even like Egg Chen from Big Trouble in Little China was in this one as well. It's just such a classic creature feature movie that's charming and funny and instantly recognizable and just iconic. It's amazing. Just like number 3. Number 3, hands down, one of the greatest family films, if not the greatest family film from the 90s. And I'm talking about Home Alone. This movie spoke to me in so many ways because I was roughly around the same age as Kevin McAllister. And I always wondered what it would be like to spend Christmas alone. You know, and when you've got Christopher Columbus directing, you've got John Williams doing the score, you've got Macaulay Culkin, who was like massive after that. I mean, like untouchably massive after that. So much so that he went on to go do like The Good Son a couple years later. And that's not what killed his career. Ultimately, I think it was Richie Rich, but we'll talk about that at another day. But Home Alone is just so damn good. Catherine O'Hara, John Candy, John Hurd, Joe Pesci, you know, Daniel Stern, the old guy with the shovel, especially the old guy with the shovel, that conversation about family and it not being too late. Such a good movie. It's so iconic. We watch it every year with the kids. That and number 2. I know some people that even make the argument that number 2 is better than number 1. That's blasphemy, but number 2 is amazing in and of itself. Speaking of number 2, Total Recall. Arnold is much like Seagal at that time, very much event viewing. Paul Verhoeven, having directed RoboCop, coming and doing Total Recall. Sharon Stone, this is before Basic Instinct, but it's like she's still doing the sexiness thing. She's got the sexiness about her in that movie. You've got Michael Ironside just being a badass villain. You know, you've even got Robert Picardo as Johnny Cab. The doctor from Voyager was Johnny Cab in that movie. The whole thing with, was it Curtis, right? Like the guy's like, I got kids to feed, man. You got the 3-titted lady. You got everything, you know, baby, you make me wish I had 3 hands. Like that whole line is just everything else. It's so great. You know, like, get to Mars. It's like such an iconic dystopian movie that really makes you question what you're watching is real or not, right? And you never really know at the end. And I'm not the biggest fan of ambiguous endings, but I think the movie earned its ambiguous ending. It gives him a happy ending. Whether or not it's real or fake, we don't even know. But the movie is so damn good that it's so rewatchable. I actually bought it on 4K for my birthday a few months ago. That is how much I love Total Recall. But my favorite, hands down movie of 1990 was a movie that I saw on my 8th birthday because it came out just a few days after I turned 8. March 30th, 1990. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I love this damn movie. All these years later, I absolutely love this damn movie. It's only gotten better with age because I've been able to age alongside it. So I understand a lot of the struggles. I understand a lot of what they were trying to do. When I was a kid, I loved it, but I felt that it had departed itself too much from the show because I was, 5 in 1987 when Turtles came out, right? And you hear the theme song, and that theme song is so iconic and so amazing and so awesome. It's like you get into it and you're like, the movie doesn't have any of that, and there's reason for it, but it's such an iconically great film that they even went and they did the sequel a year later, and that one basically dumbed everything down because too many parents were upset about how dark and mature the first movie was. But that, going back, looking at it now, 32, 34 years later, I'm just blown away by how amazing it was, how the puppetry was. I think that was Stan Winston, right? I like the, it looked fantastic for back then. And then, it's Turtles, man. It will always hold such a high and esteemed place in my heart. And I still remember to this day, and you guys are going to laugh your damn ass off at me, but I remember to this day when I was walking out of the theater, the credits were rolling. I was on cloud 9, and I looked up and I looked into the projection booth and I saw a guy that looked just like Elias Koteas, looked just like Casey Jones. So in my stupid 8-year-old headcanon, I thought, holy shit, Casey Jones was our projectionist. I still vividly remember that. That is how much that movie means to me. Like I said, there's a lot of movies in 1990 that I just didn't get to. That putting together a list of 20 films or 25 films is very difficult to do. But my whole point with doing all this is to showcase the idea that, yeah, like movies mean things, right? The lists are not determined of the quality of the movie. Christ, I put American Ninja 4 on here. But the movies themselves mean a lot to me. And that's why I want to talk more about them. So what are your guys' top films from 1990? Anything I overlooked, anything you're mad at me for, you agree with me with, please let me know. And stay tuned because I'm going to be covering 1991. We're going to do a lot of these. I've seen a lot of movies, and God damn it, I want to talk about them. My name is Matt Jarbo. Have yourself a great night. Be sure to check back to the channel daily for movie news coverage with Hollywood After Dark. I'll talk to you guys later. Have yourself a great day. Thank you again for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you're new, and peace out.